At what point did the doubts begin to overtake the faith? At what point would you say that you actually lost faith in, how you identified it?
Yeah. The end of 2017, I was starting to have dreams where I just stood up in church and was like, I don't believe any of this, and just like walking out. And so I would say retroactively that was when I didn't believe anymore, but I didn't accept that until about spring of 2018 was when we left the church, or like we decided that we were going to leave, and then we left like the next week or something like that, next week or two, as soon as we could.
And was that for you as well, Kenny? Or was it a joint thing? Did it happen in unison, or did one person lead to the other?
No, yeah. So she was definitely ahead of me as far as
you were a preacher.
I was a preacher. I was really bought in.
And I was really scared because I was about to wreck his life, because the Bible says you can't be a pastor anymore if your wife's an unbeliever.
Yeah.
So I'm like mortified. I'm like, I have to be really sure that this isn't real, because I'm about to wreck this guy's life.
I think it actually says, be not equally yoked with non-believers, but it also says the husband is sanctified through the wife and the wife is sanctified through the husband. So there's biblical ways to get around that too.
Weird. You mean this is the book of multiple choice, Bryce? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Depends on how you look at it. It depends on which passages you gravitate towards that comport with, what you want to believe. But
yeah. I can remember pretty strongly one night we were visiting some friends, and we had a pretty in-depth conversation where this friend of ours who was an atheist, and I think she still is, or secularist of some kind, and she straight up asked me, well, Kenny, how do you feel about Monica having all these doubts? And there was a moment there where I realized, like,
why do you think she asked you that?
Because she is an excellent conversationalist, and she's just really good at asking very pointed questions.
Do you think that she suspected about you, or was she just only suspecting about Monica?
Only about Monica.
Yeah.
She was shocked that we left. She was especially shocked that I left. And I think that that's partially just because she had already been having conversations with Monica. But that was the moment where I realized how seriously I needed to take it. Up until that point, it was, I was viewing a lot of these conversations as kind of just intellectual conversations to have, and not necessarily something's on the line. Faith is on the line, and so from that point forward, I had in the back of my mind of, okay, I need to take this seriously enough so that I'm not just giving a church answer, like an answer that's going to be good enough for someone who's already bought into it. It needs to be an answer that's good enough to actually convince. And so we started reading various different blogs and articles.
Debates.
We watched, multiple debates. I read Misquoting Jesus by Bart Ehrman.
So it sounds like you started off light. You started off with like the atheists who were historical Jesus people. And then I can see the transition here happening. Like, I can see the flow between young earth fundamentalist, creationist, Bible believing Christians to, okay, still Christians, but old earth creationists, maybe letting some science in, to, okay, skepticism, let's talk to an atheist who believes in a real Jesus, but just to kind of get his take, to atheist. Is that kind of how the train was going?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. That's I hadn't even thought about it in that kind of timeline way, but yeah, that sums it up pretty well.
Yeah.
And you were teachers at the time you left the church?
Yes.
Okay. I guess that's fortunate, right? Because it was just faith that was on the line. For some people in your previous profession, that's their full-time job, is being a pastor. So if you lose your faith as a pastor, you're screwed.
You lost your income.
You've lost your job, and potentially your house as well. because a lot of them get provided that. So it sounds like you had a safety net. So that's fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were on spring break. It was the March of 2018, and we had a car accident on the way home, and our truck actually flipped twice. And I remember thinking, there's no God to help me. And that's when I knew I didn't believe anymore. Like, it's not even worth praying. There's nobody there to hear me. I always thought, like, as a Christian, I always thought, well, people call on God when they're dying. Like, people, they fall flip but that's not what happened at all. I realized the pure futility of even trying. Like, might as well think of something nice.
Yeah, I used to be in the military. Go ahead, Caleb.
I'm sorry. Is that to say that what you're describing is sort of an atheist in a foxhole moment where you're like...
Well, I was just going to say I used to be in the military, and that's a very common expression in the military where I've never dug a foxhole, but theoretically it would be possible for me to have dug a foxhole. And yeah, there's no atheists in foxholes. The military is a very religious organization. You'd be surprised. But I didn't buy that because I was in a similar situation to you, Monica. Not that particular situation, but I've been in scary situations to where I doubted everything as a believer. Even just anyone who's been under the knife or gone under general anesthesia. I don't know if any of you have done that before, but for me, that was a terrifying experience to where I legitimately thought I may never wake up again. And I'm not sure that, like, a Christian shouldn't believe that. Like a theist, a Bible believing person who thinks there's a life after death shouldn't, be afraid to never wake up again.
Right.
And that's exactly what I thought when I went under. I'm like, I'm never waking up again. So
and that's the thought that I had during that car accident was, this is over, this is it. Which I've had these kind of, these foxhole moments in the past. I've been in dangerous situations where they're almost life and death situations, and in those moments in the past when I was really deep in the faith, I felt completely at peace. No fear whatsoever. Kind of what you would expect to think if you really believe it, right? If okay, well, if I die, then I'm in heaven with Jesus. It's going to be great. It's fine. But no, not this time. This time it was what you said. It's, oh crap, this is it. I might not live past this moment, and my life is over.
And was that the moment for you also?
Kind of. I mean, I think in retrospect, so when I thought back on it over the coming weeks, it was, I'm not sure that I believe this anymore. Like if that's what my response was, then how can I be a believer? And so that, I think that kind of marked kind of me realizing that I really did need to step away and I needed to get out so that I could really process it on my own without the risk of, I'm a pastor, of losing a job or anything like that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Caleb.
You didn't start claiming you were an atheist until a long time after we left the church.
Right.
You just started saying you weren't sure, and, so you couldn't be a pastor anymore, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Caleb.
My stepfather, towards the end of his life, the last 2 years, he was really struggling through how to navigate his multiple strokes. He was a person who has dedicated his life to the written word. And I knew this growing up. But I did notice some significant changes after we started having some strokes. And, honestly, as much as I can relate to you guys, in the 11th hour, thinking, oh, shit, what am I thinking the thoughts that you had. His 11th hour experience was much different. His was an entire lifetime of preparing for that moment. And I've always wondered if that was me. Do I have any reason to think that I would have reacted differently? In other words, I think that indoctrination plays a very crucial role. Not only does indoctrination play a crucial role, but so does your environment.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I want to fault theists for maintaining their theistic beliefs, at the end of the day, at the 11th hour, it's really hard to judge.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, in your experience at the 11th hour, would you say that in those moments that what you were experiencing was abnormal, and B, if it's not abnormal, how would you relate that and to the average human experience insofar as how we should understand these experiences?
I suppose,
and I have an answer as well, but go ahead.
Okay. I suppose my thought is my expectation, at least, was that it was abnormal for a believer to have those kinds of thoughts. And part of that being because I had been in similar situations and had different thoughts. I'd had more religious thoughts in it. And I have heard multiple testimonies in church. I'd spent my entire life in church. And so I've heard multiple testimonies of people in those sorts of situations where they have some kind of maybe revelation, or they feel the peace of God fall upon them, or whatever it is. And so my expectation was that that was abnormal. But I suppose I'm not entirely sure if those testimonies that I've heard were the norm, or if they were just the vocal, the squeaky wheel or whatever.
Yeah, how many people have you interviewed? Well, how many people have had experiences like that who are believers versus the ones who haven't had those experiences?
Right.
And of those, how many did you speak to? And did you speak
Right.
to any of the ones that didn't? It's kind of hard to know the answer to these
Right.
questions.